We do a lot of talking about Nebraska's roster going into 2025. That Raiola is expected to take a huge jump forward. The wide receivers are the best they've been in over a decade. The offensive line is very much improved. But with that being said, I've realized that we never sit down and have a full conversation about the Husker coaching staff. So in today's video, we're going to change that. I'm going to give you my full deep dive of every single Nebraska coach going into this season, the pros and cons of every single one of them, my honest expectations for every coach, who's a good recruiter, who's not, who's been doing a good job behind the scenes, who's been struggling, who's potentially on the hot seat and might move on. And then when it's all said and done, I'm going to give you my grades for every single Husker positional coach, every coordinator, and then last but not least, our head man, Matt Rhule. So really quick, this is a jam-packed video, deep dive of every single Nebraska coach. Hit that like button if you're fired up because I know why. I'll make sure to watch the entire thing because it is nuts. And also, if you're a diehard Nebraska fan and you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? For daily content, talking your favorite team, talking Huskers, it's a no-brainer. It takes 2 seconds. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, let's get into it. My full deep dive of every single Nebraska coach going into 2025. We'll get things started with the positional coaches. Then we'll go to the coordinators. And last but not least, we'll end things with Matt Rhule, my honest evaluation of how he's performed so far in year 1 and year 2, what's going to happen in year 3, and will he stick around long term? We'll talk about it. But let's get things started with our positional coaches. None other than at that quarterback spot, our quarterback coach, none other than Mr. Glenn Thomas going into his second year with the Big Red. Now, we know that he was previously with Matt Rhule at both Baylor and Temple. After that, he was with the Steelers for a short stint. He was with UNLV, but he's back with Nebraska and Matt Rhule this season, going into his second year. Now, this is somebody that when Matt Rhule was initially hired here, there were a lot of rumors that Glenn Thomas, he was going to be our offensive coordinator. Of course, they didn't end up happening. We ended up hiring Marcus Satterfield, which of course was a bad decision. We'll get to him as this video progresses, make sure of that. But Glenn Thomas is somebody who is with this coaching staff now as a quarterback coach. And honestly, it's been a very good fit. Now, from a developmental standpoint, there's a lot left to be desired. There's a lot of things we don't know. He's only going to his second year. You know, Raiola, he was good, not great as a true freshman. There were a couple things that he struggled with from an accuracy standpoint, but from a game playing standpoint, from a film standpoint, from learning the speed of the game, he was pretty decent. He was pretty decent at reading Big Ten defenses, at least for, a freshman. Obviously, could be a lot better, but for a freshman, didn't make too many mistakes until the back half of the year when he got banged up and, of course, threw all those interceptions. But really, that wasn't really on Glenn Thomas. I think Glenn Thomas did a pretty good job with Jalyn. Now, for Haarberg, obviously, Haarberg didn't really get too much better, but Haarberg kind of was a finished product at that point in time. And then, of course, we moved Haarberg over to tight end. So we don't really know how good of a developer Glenn Thomas is at this point. I mean, only going to his second year, there's a lot left that we need to figure out. But I will say this from a recruiting standpoint, Glenn Thomas is one of our unsung heroes. Nobody ever talked about Glenn Thomas as a recruiter. But, Trey Taylor, he's talked in multiple interviews, and he says one of the main reasons he committed to Nebraska wasn't because of Matt Rhule, wasn't because of Dana Holgorsen, it was because of Glenn Thomas, because he was such a good recruiter, and he was somebody who was always in kind of communication with him. We were the exact same with TJ Lateef. We heard that from Marcus Davila. One of the reasons Marcus Davila came here was because of Glenn Thomas. So, listen, Glenn Thomas is somebody who give your flowers to because he's been a really good recruiter for Nebraska, especially at the quarterback spot. Now, this is somebody, there are a lot of rumors that if Dana Holgorsen were to leave after this year, which is very possible, I think it could happen, that Glenn Thomas would be our next offensive coordinator. I'm not in love with that, honestly. I think Glenn Thomas right now, he's doing very well as our quarterback coach. I want him to stay there for the long-term future. But I think if he were to be our next offensive coordinator, it'd be kind of like Marcus Satterfield 2.0. It'd be Matt Rhule hiring his buddies, and I'm not cool with that. We already did that once with Marcus Satterfield. You hired your best friend, didn't work out. Let's not do that again with Glenn Thomas. I love him at quarterback coach, but some guys aren't meant to be offensive coordinators, at least not anymore. Okay, I think his best days of coaching are behind him. He's a great quarterback coach right now, but if Nebraska were to get a new offense coordinator, I think I want it to be kind of an outside hire, somebody who still has their best day of coaching ahead of him. So Glenn Thomas is a very solid quarterback coach. I hope he stays there. Pretty good recruiter. We don't really know about him from a developmental standpoint, but right now I will give him a grade of a B+. All right. Let's go to running backs because this is a very controversial figure within the Nebraska fan base, none other than Mr. E.J. Barthel. Honestly, I'd say one of the more disrespected coaches. This is somebody who, after year one, he's been with Matt Rhule every step of the way. After year one, there were a lot of rumors that he was going to leave the Nebraska coaching staff. Now he ended up staying, but there were the exact same rumors after year two. We know that his contract, it was running out. We didn't know if they were going to re-up that deal. And he ended up taking interviews with both Texas and Penn State, but he ended up staying with Nebraska. Huskers gave him another 2-year contract. Now, E.J. Barthel is somebody who, there are a lot of questions around him, especially from a developmental standpoint, because let's call it what it is. The development hasn't been very good so far. Okay, we just haven't seen it, right? Emmett Johnson took a little bit of a jump forward this year, but he honestly was misutilized. Probably should have played more. Gabe Irvin never took that big jump we were waiting on. Rahmir Johnson never took that big jump we were waiting on, so there are a lot of guys who honestly just weren't developed the same way we thought they were going to be. The only guy I can firmly tell you was developed very well under EJ Barthel, funny enough, was Dante Dowdell. He was so much better than what he was at Oregon as a true freshman. He was, at Oregon, he was here. Nebraska, he was there. He was so much better. Now, funny enough, Tanner Laporta is no longer with the Huskers, so we can't even reap the benefits of that development. But EJ Barthel, this is a big year for him. This is a big prove-it year. How good of a developer are you really? Okay, we're going to see how big of a jump that Emmett Johnson really takes. What about Quinn Ives? He's been hyping up Quinn Ives for a while now. We got to see it on Saturdays. You can't hide him anymore. We got to see it now. What about Mekhi Nelson, right? So, again, we'll know how good of a developer EJ Barthel is. That's been kind of the main disrespect the coaching that the fan base gives him, which I don't know if he's done a great job developing. But I will say this from a recruiting standpoint. EJ Barthel's been phenomenal. He's one of our best recruiters, no question about it. He's our best East Coast recruiter. He's our best, even some of our Midwest guys like Trey Taylor, Klamapuma. He has a big Chicago connection. He's part of the reasons those guys come in here as well. So EJ Barthel, he's the single reason we're getting these East Coast recruits along with guys from Chicago, Illinois. He's obviously done a pretty good job recruiting running backs. Thought that Jamarion Parker was a great pickup last year. So EJ Barthel, he's done a very, very good job in a recruiting aspect. Developmental, definitely a question mark. There are a lot of things there, we don't know yet. We don't know. We're going to figure out this year everything that, is a question. We will find out by the end of 2025 from a developmental standpoint. But as a recruiter, he's done a good job for that reason. I will give EJ Barthel a grade of a B. All right. Let's go to the wide receiver spot with our brand new receiver coach, Mr. Daikiel Shorts, going into his first year with Nebraska. Previously at Kentucky, he was at Houston as well with Dana Holgorsen. He was a wide receiver under Dana Holgorsen at West Virginia. But this is somebody who I can firmly tell you, I believe this was an A+ hire at the time. A+ hire, complete upgrade from Garrett McGuire, who was horrendous. One of the worst receiver coaches in America. Matt Rhule, one of my big things about Matt Rhule, we'll get to this. Matt Rhule hired such a bad staff when he got here. I don't know what he was doing when he got to Nebraska. He hired all of his friends, just kind of similar to Scott Frost, and it failed, and that's why we didn't win more games. Thankfully, he addressed that issue. But anyways, Daikiel Shorts was a great hire. This is somebody who's a complete up-and-comer. He could be a future offensive coordinator. Right off the bat, he's a phenomenal recruiter. I mean, he's a guy who's already got 2 4-stars in this class, and and Larry Miles and Nayland Scott. Part of the reason we got a bunch of really good receivers in the portal as well. So he's a great recruiter. That's what we expect from him. But from a developer, he might just be better. He was part of the reasons that, Dane Key continued to be one of the best receivers on all of the SC. Barry and Brown last year at Kentucky took a huge step. So Daikiel Shorts is a great developer. He's a great recruiter. He's very energetic. He's relatable to a lot of these guys because he's still in his 20s. He's still very young. He's a guy who, they can sit down, feel comfortable with, which is very important at that wide receiver spot. So love Daikiel Shorts. He's a positive influence, but he's somebody who definitely has high aspirations to potentially be an offensive coordinator going forward. So really like him, but this was a home run hire by the coaching staff. Great recruiter, great developer. Obviously, there's still a lot of unknowns because he hasn't actually coached a game yet, so we have to see these receivers actually live up to expectations. But as it stands, I'm going to give him a grade of an A- just because the hype is real there. The hype is real, and I really am excited to see what he does. Let's talk about him. Let's go to tight end. Mr. Marcus Satterfield. Now, of course, we know that he was previously Nebraska's offensive coordinator in both 23 and 24, was demoted, quote unquote, fired from offensive coordinator, moved down to tight ends, which he was there the entire time. Now, Marcus Satterfield is somebody who, frankly, honestly, was he a terrible offensive coordinator? Absolutely. He was awful. He was one of the worst offensive coordinators in America. But quietly, he's actually done a pretty good job at tight ends. He's actually done a really good job recruiting as well. I'll give him credit where credit's due. I thought Luke Sorensen was a very good pull in this year's class. I thought he's a 4-star talent. He's got a couple other guys when he first got here in Nebraska. Got Cardinals, which is a big win. So he's done a pretty good job recruiting. And honestly, from a developmental standpoint, it hasn't been too bad either. Like Nate Borkerture took a huge jump last year. He ended up going to Texas A&M. Like Luke Lindemeyer took a huge jump this offseason. I think Mac Markway, is going to take a big jump. We're going to see what Haarberg does this year. So I think from a developmental standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Marcus Satterfield's done a good job. Oddly enough, is he a bad offensive coordinator? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean he's not a good positional coach. Does not mean he's not a good coach in, one way, right? A lot of people just aren't meant to be coordinators. They're not meant to be head coaches. He's meant to be a positional coach, and he's doing a good job at it. So I'm honestly cool with it. Him staying at tight ends. We'll see if he sticks around long term. Obviously, there's some rumors he's not going to be on this coaching staff after this year. We kind of heard the same thing last year. So we'll just kind of wait and see with Marcus Satterfield. But he's doing a good job at tight ends. I'm going to give respect where it is due. I'm going to give him a grade. Let's see. I'm going to give him a grade. I'm going to give him another B+. B+ grade from Mr. Marcus Satterfield as the tight end coach. All right. Let's talk Donny Raiola, because this is another kind of a quote-unquote questionable figure within the fan base. This was the only coach that Matt Rhule retained from the Scott Frost coaching tree. Now, Donny Raiola, of course, is the uncle of Dylan. That's kind of part of the reason we hired him, honestly. He didn't have the greatest resume. He was the assistant offensive line coach with the Bears, which is fine, but really didn't have too much experience. But we pretty much hired him because we thought, okay, this is going to give us our best opportunity to get a 5-star quarterback, and it kind of paid off. But, going into Donny Raiola, he's going into his 4th year with Nebraska, which is crazy. Time flies. From a developmental standpoint, it's not been bad. It really hasn't been bad. Like, obviously, there's a lot left to be desired, but I thought Bryce Benhart got a lot better last year. Justin Evans is somebody who's constantly improved. I honestly think, like, the offensive line, there's some players who are considered busts who Donny Raiola, he's just kind of made this better and better, slower and slower every year. Like, it's not take a huge jump by any means, but it's kind of just inching better and better every year, which is fine. Like, he's a decent developer, clearly. From a recruiting standpoint, it was a slow start for him for sure, but it's definitely gotten better. Like, I thought last year's class in the 25 class was phenomenal, multiple 4-stars. This year's class is really, really good too, Klama Puma. And then you're looking at the 27 class, he's already going after multiple 5-stars. Now, can he land them? Obviously, we'll see, but Donny Raiola is honestly doing a pretty decent job. But again, this is a big year for him. Big year from a developmental standpoint. And honestly, the big thing from Donny Raiola, while I think he's developing pretty decently, the offensive lineman, for whatever reason, can't stay healthy. Can he figure that out? I don't know. But honestly, Donny Raiola is doing a good job. He's one of those coaches where you either love him or you hate him. A lot of people love him. There's a couple players, Michael Mazuka, who hate him, right? So hopefully we can get guys here who love him, because he's a guy who's going to get on you. He's going to get into you a little bit. He will. He will insult you a little bit. He'll push you around a little bit, but he's going to make you a better man. He cares about you on and off the field. So that's kind of how it is with offensive line coaches. But honestly, he's doing a decent job. I'll give him a B-. All right. Terry Bradden, let's get into another first-year position coach with Nebraska. Definitely been tumultuous start. We don't know about him as a developer yet. We've seen, obviously, what he's done with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was assistant D-line coach there, so that's cool. But from a recruiter, we already kind of know what it is. Like, it's not been pretty. It's not been pretty so far with recruiting. It's going to get better. Obviously, it takes time for him to, he's never been in college before. We kind of expected that going into it. So recruiting, hopefully that gets better, but hasn't been awesome so far. But honestly, as a developer, while we don't have any experience so far at Nebraska, he's done a good job with the Chiefs. I expect him to be a pretty good developer, bring the best out of guys like Riley Van Pop or Cameron Leithart. And once again, a pretty good hire by Matt Rhule, getting a guy from the Chiefs. He'll take that every single day of the week. So, very, very blankly, again, there's just a lot that we don't know yet. I think he's a solid recruiter or solid developer. I don't know about him from a recruiting standpoint. I'm just going to give him a grade of a B- right now, just because there's so many recruiting question marks. I can't really do anything higher than that. And recruiting's literally half of these guys' jobs. If you're a position coach, half of your job is to recruit. He's not really doing half of his job right now, so that's a big, big issue. So again, but he's still transitioning. We'll give him time. Mr. Terry Bradden. Then a couple others here. Rob Dvoracek at that linebacker spot. This is somebody who, once again, has done a pretty good job recruiting. He brought in 4-stars in last year's class, and of course, Dawson Merritt, Pierce Mooberry, and then Christian Jones. So that was a big win. He's going to potentially get a couple other in this class as well, flipping guys like potentially Jordan Campbell, Cameron Wilson. We'll see about that. So he's done a decent job recruiting. Developing has also been not bad, right? Like, I thought he brought the best out of a couple guys from a guy here, whether it's a Nick Henrich or Luke Reimer. Honestly, like we saw Stephon Thompson, even though, there's a big question mark there. He played decent when he got on the field. Vincent Shavers played well as a true freshman. I thought he brought the best out of MJ Sherman, took some time there. So developer, it's leaving a little bit on the table, right? Big year for him, right? To see how much Vincent Shavers takes that jump. What about a guy like Jacob Ballard, the coaching staff hypes up? But I think he's another good coach. I like this coach for the coaching staff for Nebraska. It's been pretty good. So I'm going to give him a grade of just a solid B. So pretty much all B's and A's so far. Again, I don't mean it to be that way, but I kind of like the staff. I really do kind of like the staff. And then we got Addison Williams to round things off, talking positional coaches. We hired him from UCF, first-year guy, previously a co-defensive coordinator over there with the Knights. Addison Williams, there's a lot to like there. Recruiting, done a good job at wherever he's been, so I'm not really worried about that. He already brought in Danny Odom, which is a big win. From a developmental standpoint, there's some issues there, right? There were some issues at UCF. There were some issues in his past tense. So I'm kind of waiting to see on the developmental thing. We know there's a lot of talent, so I can't really judge a man so far. But this is somebody who could very well be Nebraska's next defensive coordinator if John Butler moves on or doesn't work out. With his experience, we could see him be that guy. So again, kind of wait and see. I don't want to really grade him too much for only being here for a couple months, but I'm going to give him a grade of a solid B. And then a couple other guys before we get to the coordinators. Let's talk Phil Snow. Now, Phil Snow, of course, was brought in kind of like an analyst. He's assistant head coach. He's pretty much going to help out a little bit in practice, but also from a game planning standpoint, that's really where he's mostly going to be utilized. Now, he was previously defensive coordinator with Matt Rhule at Baylor and at Temple. So Phil Snow is somebody who, again, just a veteran, right? I mean, he's an old guy, been around college football before, been around the block a couple of times. He's seen a couple things or two. So this is a good hire by Matt Rhule. Again, obviously, this is one of his guys, one of his friends, right? But it's just a different set of eyes, and he definitely brings a lot of experience. So he's going to be a big asset when we get to the year and we start game planning. Now, Phil Snow's not somebody who's going to recruit at all. His main role, he's not really involved in practice too much. He is in practice, but not too much. His main aspect is really going to be game planning and talent evaluation. And that's where I think is going to really benefit us. So I'm not going to give him a grade because he's not like a full coach or anything, but definitely a good addition by the staff. And then, honestly, we got another Phil, not another Phil S. This is Phil Simpson, who, in my opinion, is Nebraska potentially the most valuable coach on the entire staff as a positional coach. He's our new jack coach, outside linebackers, but without a doubt, when it comes to Phil Simpson, he's by far the best recruiter on the staff, and it's not close. It's not close. Okay, he's the reason why Nebraska's back. Pretty much all of these guys who are from Florida who committed to Nebraska, you can thank Phil Simpson and pretty much nobody else for, because Phil Simpson's that guy. Of course, we know that he's a previous head coach in Florida, so he got connections down there. But if you want, you want the reason why Corey Barney's here, if you want a reason why Vincent Shaver's here, Wilson McGahee, is because of Phil Simpson. Now, we know that Phil Simpson was here in 2023 when Matt Rhule first got here, moved down to Florida State in 24. We brought him back this year. So Phil Simpson is somebody who, Nebraska got to do whatever it takes to keep him long term. He's never somebody who's going to be a defensive coordinator. Like, he's pretty much always going to be an outside linebackers coach or something along those lines. But you just got to pay this guy good money to stick around because he's so good as a recruiter. And honestly, as a developer, we'll see. We'll see as a developer. I don't know. I mean, he didn't develop too well for Florida State last year because Florida State didn't really win too many games. But we'll see what happens with Phil Simpson. But I'm going to give him an A+, frankly, because he's such a good recruiter. He's so valuable in that aspect. All right, the time has come. Let's get to the coordinators, my honest opinions about all the coordinators going into this year. Let's start with Dana Holgorsen, right? Pros and cons there. Obviously, we're not really going to talk about development or recruiting because it's a completely different task. Like the positional coaches, it's all about development and recruiting. For offensive defensive coordinators, it's mostly about game planning and honestly talent evaluation a little bit, but I mean developing a little bit, but it's mostly about game playing and how you actually perform on game day. So Dana Holgorsen, obviously previous head coach of West Virginia and Houston, a lot of 10-year experience, been around the block a couple of times, as they say. I like Dana Holgorsen. I do. I think he's somebody who's has an explosive offense. He's an adaptive mind. He's not somebody who's an old head coach who's will and only do things one way. He's always trying to improve himself. He's somebody who, once again, I think he's just as smart as Matt Rhule, if not smarter, right? He's a great game planner, probably a better game planner than Matt Rhule. So there's a lot to like around Dana Holgorsen. Obviously, when he was here in 4 games, the USC game was pretty underwhelming. Kind of an underwhelming start, but I'll give him, I won't give him grief for that because it was his first game. Wisconsin was obviously phenomenal, but we played that one at home. Iowa was bad. We should have been a lot better against the Iowa game, only putting up 10 points. That's not good enough. And then Boston College was mad, but it is what it is. It was a bowl game with the conditions, right? So we have a small sample size with Dana Holgorsen, but it really wasn't his fault because he was only here for 4 games. He got here in the middle of the season, really not much he could do. So Dana Holgorsen, I think, is going to completely revolutionize this offense. It's going to be pass first. It's going to be very quick, RPO heavy, quick passes, slants, screens down the field, right? Getting your playmakers involved like Corey Barney, Demetrius Bell, Dane Keaton, Isaiah Hunter, Evan Johnson, right? So listen, I think Dana Holgorsen is a complete improvement from Marcus Satterfield. It's going to be 9-day. The red zone play calling is going to be better. The explosive plays are going to be better. I'm going to give him a grade of an A-. I think it's going to be solid. The only reason why he's not higher is because Dana Holgorsen, first off, I don't know if he's going to stick around because I just don't know if his heart is in Nebraska as being an offense coordinator long term. That's just my opinion. You can have your opinion. That's my opinion. I just don't know if he's going to stick around long term. And my second thing is that he's just not a good recruiter. He does not get involved in recruiting. That is what it is. Most offensive coordinators don't. The older you get, the more you don't really want to recruit. We see this all the time with these coaches, right? Who, they're getting their 70s. They're like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So Dana Holgorsen just doesn't really recruit, which is what it is. But I'll give him a grade of an A. All right. Defensive coordinator. Also a brand new defensive coordinator. And Mr. John Butler. So, of course, we hired him last offseason to be our DB coach. The plan in writing was him to be our defensive coordinator after, of course, Tony White left. We know that he was our DC against Boston College. Honestly, he was pretty good. We saw some improvements. I thought the blitz packages were very much improved. I thought the aggressiveness was improved. So, again, there's a lot we don't know about John Butler just yet. There's a lot we don't know. I mean, frankly, I want to see this game playing. I want to see the zone coverage. I want to see the blitz concepts again, because that's something that I thought Tony White really struggled at. I thought the situational awareness was also something really bad there. The aggressiveness, taking the ball away, was something that we really struggled at. So John Butler, I'm hoping he improves on all these cylinders. I'm somebody who thought very highly of Tony White. I thought he was severely underrated. You know, the highs were high with Tony White, the lows were very low. Let's see if John Butler can be more of a consistent defensive coordinator. So again, there's just a lot we don't know. There's a lot of unknowns in this coaching staff. As much as there is on their team, there's a lot of coaching staff. There's a lot of question marks on the coaching staff. We'll see. We'll see when it comes to John Butler. So I'm just going to give him a grade of a B. It's a B. There's a lot of unknowns. And I am concerned with his lack of experience as a defensive coordinator. Again, it's been a decade since he's a defensive coordinator back at Penn State. And he did a good, not great job there. Good, not great. Well, he's been pounding on the table for another opportunity. He finally gets it. Make the most of it, John Butler. But I'm going to give him a grade of a B just now. Another guy just doesn't really get involved in recruiting as well. But from a game playing standpoint, we just don't know yet. But honestly, did a good job when we saw him against Boston College. And then one more before we get into Mr. Matt Rhule. Mr. Mike Ekeler, probably one of the most, I'd say one of the most favorite coaches right now in Nebraska's roster. Of course, coming back, he was previously with us with Bo Pelini. He was at Tennessee the last couple of years. He was making his rounds all over college football, kind of a journeyman coach back at Nebraska, where he's from. Now, Mike Ekeler is somebody who, listen, he's all about aggressiveness. He's personality, full of energy all the time. It's hard not to like a guy like Mike Ekeler. He's going to bring the best out of this special team. I know he will, because he cares about it. He understands the importance. He's not somebody who has, his foot in, one door and a foot in another, right? He's always both feet are in the special teams department. He's not caring about the linebackers anymore. He's not caring about the defense. He's all in special teams. And that's a good thing. We need somebody who's a solidified special teams coordinator, who knows what he's doing, who has a track record of success. So that's what I like about Mike Ekeler, man. I think he's going to be just phenomenal for Nebraska this year. I'm hoping. The only thing I have a question mark about really is the kicking and the punting. How good is Archie Wilson going to be as a punter? I don't know. What about kicking situation? Can we find our guy? We have 3 decent kickers. Can we find a good one out of that bunch? Can he develop one of those guys to be consistent and healthy? I don't know, but I feel great about the kick returns. Feel great about the punt returns, the coverage. The snapping shouldn't be an issue anymore. I know Mike Ekeler is going to bring the best out of all of them, bring some creative flares to all of it. So I'm excited for Mike Ekeler, man. I'm excited to see what he does. Huge hire. And to think that Matt Rhule said on record that he didn't want to hire Mike Ekeler, and he was kind of forced into doing it. Now he's happy to do it. Like, Matt Rhule, you should have hired this guy from the jump, because this is our guy. He's from Nebraska. He's one of our own. Okay, I love every Nebraska coach, but I also love guys who are one of our own, who grew up in the state and they know how important Nebraska football is. Okay, this is one of our guys. We got to protect him. We got to keep him here. So Mike Ekeler, I'm going to give him a grade, simply A+. A+ grade. I'm excited to see what he does. All right, that leads us to our head man, Mr. Matt Rhule. So of course we know that Matt Rhule is going into his 3rd year with Nebraska. First year, 5-7, very disappointing. We had a kind of a hot start, and then we lost 4 straight to not make a bowl game. Then going into 2nd year, a lot of expectations, 5-star quarterback. We started off hot once again. We got a little bit of a losing streak. People were concerned that we were going to lose 6 straight and not make a bowl game again. We inched one out against Wisconsin. We ended the year 6-6, went over to Boston College, beat them, and had a winning record for the first time in a long time, 7-6. But as it stands with Matt Rhule, let's just call it what it is. He has a losing record. He's 12-13, and he's impressed me in a lot of aspects. I'll start off with the pros. Like, I think the development's been very good. That's the first thing the Temple and Baylor fans told us, is that he's a great developer. That's correct. He's a great developer. He's a great players coach. He's done a great job recruiting, which honestly I wasn't expecting. The only thing around Matt Rhule that I just won't lie to you, I've been very disappointed with, is his in-game decision making, because it's been horrendous. His clock management, his use of tight ends or timeouts. Again, the fact that when he got hired here, he hired all of his buddies, and most of the guys that he hired are no longer with his coaching staff because he fired them and they moved on. So I think there's a lot of mistakes that Matt Rhule made when he got here. I'm happy that he addressed those issues. The main thing I'm looking at for Matt Rhule is simply, if we're in a tight situation, I want to have confidence in you that you're not going to blow a timeout, or you're not going to make a poor decision from a personnel standpoint. Okay, because he's made a lot of personnel issues too. Like, he was the same guy that in year 1 told everybody that Jeff Sims was going to be a future NFL starter, and Jeff Sims turned out to be one of the worst quarterbacks in the history of Nebraska football. Like, he told us, he looked in our eyes and said Jeff Sims is going to be phenomenal, and Jeff Sims was horrendous. And then he started Haarberg while Joe Purdy was the best quarterback on our roster that year and didn't play until against Wisconsin, right? So I saw that say this. Like, Matt Rhule made a lot of blunders. I forgave him for all of that because it's a clean slate. It's a big year for Matt Rhule, but honestly, this is the year with Matt Rhule where, I mean, this is it, right? Like, if you have a tough year this year, I'm going to stop being so nice. Like, we got you talk a lot of game. Matt Rhule's been kind of amping up the crap talking a little bit recently. He's feeling a little bit optimistic, as he should, right? The roster looks good. The coaching staff looks good. Again, I told you guys, the coaching staff genuinely believes they're going to make the college football playoff this year. They believe that. And you might not believe that. You might think that's a little daunting, and that's great, but that's what the coaching staff believes. They believe they're going to be in the mix to win 9-10 games. Okay. So Matt Rhule, again, he's been building up. You saw that tweet, a couple weeks ago where he said that the people who, profit off of negativity, that's their days are gone. Like, he's been talking some crap, right? Back it up, Matt Rhule. That's all I'm hoping on. So, from a developmental standpoint, it's been an A+. From a recruiting standpoint, it's been an A. In-game decision, game planning, not been so good. And the fact that we get on, it's hard for us to get on winning streaks, but it's very easy for us to get on losing streaks. That's been the problem. Like, losing 5 of our last 6 games last year, unacceptable. Unacceptable. Simply put, it was unacceptable. Losing our last 4 games in 2023, that was also unacceptable. That can't happen this year. Okay. It's about winning the games we're supposed to win, all of them, and then potentially getting a sneaky win, maybe get to Michigan, Penn State this year. So Matt Rhule, I'll be very honest with you, I'm going to give him a grade of a C+. And I know a lot of people are going to say that, whoa, Wilson, that's the lowest grade of anybody you gave in this entire video. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to Matt Rhule truth, and I'll make that very clear. I think Matt Rhule's a great coach. And I think he's probably going to work out here long term. I really do. But if I'm going to just be honest with you, we have a losing record within 2 years. Recruiting's good, not great. But the in-game decision makings and the losing streaks, the one things that kill us, right? So as it stands, it's a C+. But with that being said, it's very open. Okay. At the end of the year, it could be an A, depending on how well we perform. So, just objectively looking at year 1 and year 2, I'm going to give him a C+. If you told me when we hired Matt Rhule 2 years ago that we would have a losing record after year 2, I would say, wow, that's not probably the hottest start of all time, right? I don't think many Nebraska fans would be too impressed. So I'm going to give him a C+. That's going to be being real, but that doesn't mean he's going to be C+ forever. He's allowed to prove this year. And I think he's going to show up, and I think he's going to prove me wrong in a big way. I think he's going to up his grade, and I'm hoping he does just that. So that's my evaluation of every single coach on Nebraska's coaching staff going into this year. Let me know your thoughts down below about every single one of them. Do you disagree? Do you agree? Let me know. I want to hear your thoughts down below. Hey, if you made this far on the video, shout out to you. Hit that like button and subscribe. I appreciate you guys. As always, folks, go Matt Rhule, and I'll see you in the next one.